right, so let's get started. So this group is going to be called What is Addiction? It's not going to be super practical. We're not going to be really learning any like practical skills that you can apply to help you in your recovery. For me, I'm high in trait openness if you follow the Big Five model, and I'm more of a theoretical person. I'm more about kind of identifying the fundamental reasons or philosophies that like, you know, give rise to the behaviors that we exhibit. So, nice. That's okay. We can edit that out. Or we can't. We can just leave it. Doesn't matter. Drug addicts, man. Everyone laugh. Laugh track. We need a laugh track. All right, so anyways. So the reason why I like doing these kind of like free-flowing thought groups is like I see a couple people in here that I know personally, and I see a lot of people in here that have been to treatment before. And so lots of people that I know have been to treatment multiple times. And in the treatment center I work, and maybe this is a little bit of a... doesn't look so good on the treatment center, but I mean, it's no different anywhere else, is that most of the time, if I look at like the client list for how many people are here, usually about 40% of people that go through your average treatment center are repeat clients. Now, unless you go to one of those insane treatment centers that are like 30 grand a month, you won't see a lot of repeat clients there. But at a place like this, who is a nonprofit and we're a bit cheaper and we're government funded, we got a lot of heart. Usually, out of all the people here, 40% of them have been here before, and about 20% of them have been here multiple times. And I know several people who have been to treatment over 20 times. And then you got to ask yourself, like, what is causing people to have to come back to treatment over and over and over again? And I'm not a fan of the, oh, they're just not trying hard enough excuse. I'm really not a fan of that. That's true for some people. Some people honestly don't care. They don't understand the fact that they can change their lives and recreate their lives. They just don't understand that. And so they come here and they look to become better in some way, but they don't actually go about doing anything that they need to do in order to accomplish it. Why? It's because they don't have a goal. They don't have a clearly defined goal. They come in here looking to get better. Okay? And what does that mean? Because getting better to some people is having more money. Getting better to some people is having lots of women chasing you around all the time. Getting a sick upper body pump, super tanned, hitting the beach. That's getting better for some people. Getting better and feeling better are obviously two wildly different things. And if you come here to just feel better, you probably won't get better. Although you will feel better if you come here. So what about the people that aren't like that? What about the people that come here with a goal of like, I want to be sober? Like I actually want to stay sober because I know that sobriety will change my life. I've got lots of problems. I can't get my shit together. I'm plagued with unhappiness. I can't be of real use to other people. I have very turbulent relationships with the people in my life. I don't feel good about myself. Something's missing in my life. There's just something missing. And like it's all these feelings that like come along with addiction, and it's like, man, the mountain seems insurmountable. It's like we don't know how to go about solving that. If it was like, how do I remove this large mound of dirt from my front yard? Like that's a simple problem. You can see the problem, you can observe it, you can get a shovel, and you can remove it. You can't really see spiritual progress or see mental health progress in a sense that you could see the dirt disappearing off your front lawn. I know that's a bit of a weird example, but it's the best I can get off the fly. So again, the question becomes, well, why do people keep coming back? And for me, my main deal, and I fall short of this ideal a lot, but I'm always striving for it, is accuracy. Accurate information. I want to be as accurate as humanly possible when you're describing addiction. Okay? What's the first step to solving a problem? Acknowledging it? Yeah, exactly. Admitting that you have the problem. And in AA, step one, bada bing, bada boom. They've got their bases covered. That old idiom, the first step to solving a problem is admitting that you have one is true. But it's like, yeah, we can admit that we have a problem, but what is the problem? What is addiction? Here's the thing. If we actually knew what addiction was, we would be able to treat it properly. Now, addiction is treatable, and there's lots of people, myself included, that have long-term quality sobriety and who have overcome this chronic relapsing condition. But Yeah, well, temporarily. Well, even for me, yeah, temporarily. I mean, I'm 5 years right now. I'm still, well, actually, my 5 years is coming up in September, so I'm still even considered a newcomer. It's like I haven't faced all the tests that one would need to face in sobriety yet so far. So, I mean, more will be revealed, but I've been going strong for 4 years and 3/4, and I show no signs of slowing down. There's a problem with studying addiction because, you know, essentially, like, mental health is not, I'm going to borrow a term from physics right now. Mental health problems are non-local, okay? They're non-local, meaning what? Well, how I mean is it doesn't have a location. It doesn't exist in space-time. There's no location. It's not made of matter. You can't find it anywhere. You can't directly study it. You know, over here we got some random shit about the human brain. We got hippocampus, amygdala, hypothalamus, insula. We got your basal ganglia, which is in your basal forebrain. We have certain brain regions, but we can actually measure those. We can look at the size of them. Your amygdala may get bigger in response to trauma. Your hippocampus may get smaller. Your amygdala enlarges permanently for some reason. Your hippocampus will go back to normal. We can actually study these areas. We can look at the size, we can look at blood flow, we can look at things like metabolic rate, how much calories are these parts burning. And if we know, if we look at your insula and there's a very, very high metabolic rate in your insula, higher than average, you're going to be more sensitive to disgust, which is an evolutionarily based system. So and those have simple, it's cause and effect. You can measure it, you can replicate these studies over and over and over again, but there is no direct empirical evidence as to your guys' belief system or how hard or how much it hurts you when people call you names or tell you that you're not good enough, or we don't know, we can't quantify your level of sincerity at doing the steps. We can't do any of this stuff. So when it comes to things like addiction, it's notoriously hard to solve mental health issues. And I don't know if any of you guys here have suffered from depression, but I know a lot of people, including myself, who have suffered from depression. And I know some people who suffer from clinical depression, which is more of a physical disorder than I think most people would like to think. But you give these people meds to straighten out their chemical imbalance, and it's like it doesn't actually cure their depression at all. Not even a little bit. It changes some of the symptoms slightly so that maybe your life is somewhat more manageable. But even we know that with people that suffer from depression, a lot of the times lifestyle changes work surprisingly well. We know that exercise works just as good as any antidepressant out there. Now, what if you exercise and took an antidepressant, and you treated your wife with respect so she wasn't nagging you all the time, and you were a good son and you called your mother so that when you think about your parents, you're not thinking, oh man, I'm a bad son, I haven't called them after all they've done for, you know, we have no idea how much better a person can get from being absolutely shitty in every way just by acting morally. And someone like a Carl Jung would say a lot of mental health issues can be solved by a supreme moral effort, he calls it. And then we could discuss like what is morality, and it's like that's a whole other can of worms. We're not discussing that problem. We're discussing what is addiction. So again, classically there's been the moral model and there's been the disease model. Okay? And so the moral model is based on the fact that you guys have free will, it's you guys have a choice. You guys know all the harm addiction is causing you and the people around you and even society. You know all that stuff. But you just like the way that drugs feel so much that you're unwilling to give them up. And you know what? For some people, maybe that is the case to an extent. And then there's the disease model, which is kind of like its antagonist or opposite, which is like you guys don't have a choice in anything. You guys just like, you know, you're robbing from your grandma's purse. Poor you. Not poor your grandma, poor you. Because you suffer from a disease that is beyond your control. You happen to have been born with something within you that causes you to use drugs beyond any kind of choice. You guys don't have a choice. You don't have control over yourselves. This is determinism. You're a biologically pre-programmed meat puppet with zero free will, and you're just conscious of your own actions. And then it's poor you. Then it's like no matter what you guys do, it's not really your fault. It wasn't me that did that to my grandmother. It was my addiction. And like, that sounds pretty shitty. But sometimes that's true as well. Sometimes people are more moral model-y orientated, and sometimes people are more disease model-y orientated. Okay? And then we have the new one. Okay? The new kind of in the mental health field is the bio-psychosocial spiritual model. And I don't know about you guys, and I don't know about what you think of that. That could not be any broader of a category. It's either psychological, biological, spiritual, or social. And it's like, well, so that's everything. That's everything. Oh, why your addiction, why you're an addict is because of everything. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's helpful. How about give me a way out? Give me a way forward. Now, what we can say is that each addict will roughly act the same. We will definitely use drugs or alcohol, abuse them, and because that's the primary symptom. But the factors that go into making us an addict are different. Have you guys ever seen a TED Talk called Everything We Know About Addiction is Wrong? Yeah. Pretty good, huh? Pretty good TED Talk. I liked it until I went to treatment and learned about addiction. Now, that guy's a smart guy. He's got a PhD. He was invited to do a TED Talk, and not a TEDx talk, an actual TED Talk, so you need to have some pretty heavy credibility to do on something like that. But here's a PhD, a doctor, and no, he's never suffered from addiction. I'm not one of those guys that think you have to suffer from addiction to really know what it's like. There's lots of very, very smart doctors who are very, very established in their medical communities that know way more about addiction than I do. Just because I suffer from addiction doesn't mean I know more than an expert, because what characterizes an alcoholic primarily is delusion. So I think I know a lot, but who knows? I thought I knew a lot when I was smoking heroin every day and was homeless. So it shows how much I know. So there's that TED Talk, and he says, everything we know about addiction is wrong. And then he says things like this: the opposite of addiction is connection. It's like, oh, okay. Connection to what? Connection to what? Any ideas? I was pretty connected to heroin. I had a best friend that I would smoke heroin with all day, every day, and we would do everything together, and he was my best friend for life. No longer. He's no longer my best friend for life, but it's like I felt really connected to him. Of course, I was a drug addict, and of course, you know, we have our problems, and we're not like, you know, maybe there's a cap to how connected we could be to someone when we're so selfish and we need our medicine. But it's like the opposite of addiction is connection. It's like, no, it's not. Like, connection to what? This kind of stuff bothers me because I see people, yeah.
Well, with that, if you don't have the drugs, then that's the lack of connection you're searching for, so then you feel that lack of connection with the drugs, maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So that's my connection, but take it away, now I have no connection. How do I deal with life?
Yeah, no, then that's a very valid way of interpreting that. So this guy kind of goes into a little bit of the environmental spin. So addiction is largely an environmental phenomenon, which it is, because there's environment and there's genes, and that's basically it. You got your social environment, your hormonal environment, your neurotrend, like, you know, almost everything could be fit into the category of environment. But what, you guys heard of Rat Park? So Rat Park, there's the cocaine water. The rats continually drink the cocaine water till they die. You put another rat in, cocaine water till they die. You put it in, and they're just dying. They're just like, you know, working as hard as they possibly can to kill themselves. Not too much different than what we do, actually, to be honest. But then you put the rat in Rat Park. So there's a bunch of other rats in there. They got the wheels, they got slides, they got pools, they got the cocaine water and the regular water. None of these rats die. Most of the rats don't even go for the cocaine water, and the ones that do only have it once or twice, maybe 3 times, and then they stop because they have a rich, fulfilling environment. So it's like, oh, that's very interesting, because rats are quite similar to humans as far as brain structure goes, and even behavior, more than most people would think. We behave like mammals are quite similar comparatively to whatever, right? There's a couple problems with that I immediately noticed. Well, first of all, those lab rats that were tested, we don't know how many generations in they are, but let's just say an arbitrary number, and you can take this or leave this. Let's just say 20th generation. They're 20th generation lab rats. So it's like, well, they don't actually resemble normal rats at all. The whole field of ethology, okay? The whole scientific field of ethology, like Jane Goodall, the whole thing is you have to study an animal in its natural environment. Because when you study an animal in its natural environment, then they behave the way that they were genetically programmed to behave. They don't behave like that in cages. And so if you take two rats, a wild rat and a 20th generation lab rat, and you look at the cortex size, which is, you guys know about the cortex, executive function, abstract thinking, not that I don't think rats can abstractly think, but it's all the highest order functions that a mammal is capable of. If you look at a wild rat, their cortex is 30% bigger, roughly speaking. Way bigger. Insanely, they're way more complicated and they're way smarter. And then the scientists, I don't know which ones, don't ask me, they designed not Rat Park, but Rat Brain Park. Let's design an extremely rewarding but complicated environment, B.F. Skinner style, behavioralist style, and see if we can make the cortexes of these rats as powerful as a wild rat. And they tried that, not even close. Not even close. So that's the first problem I have with that study. Now, there's another thing that's really important with humans, because humans are different. The one thing that separates us from animals the most, in my belief, and you guys probably hear me talk about it all the time, consciousness. We have an expanded, vast consciousness that can host a lot of different types of experience, abstract thought. We know we're going to die. We have the quality of understanding. So this is what separates us. So when you're talking about addiction being largely environmental, well, we're all in the same environment, are we not? Some guys, it's your first day in here. And you're shaking it rough and you're not feeling good and you don't know how this time is going to be different. And this environment is like, fuck, I'm here again. My environment, I'm at work. I'm filming for my YouTube channel. Things are okay in my life. This is the place where I actually got better and then became employed. And now I'm like doing things I never thought I could do. So this environment is different for me than it is for that other hypothetical person. Then we got people, and this place is a prison. There's a lot of people who are like, it was literally jail or here. And they're just doing time. And so environment is internal to a large extent with humans. It's based off perceptions. And our perceptions are based off our belief system. And our belief system is based off things that happened in the past, for better or for worse. And then you want to talk about connection. Who here has felt alone in a room full of their friends and family? Yeah, everyone puts it. Yeah, because I have. I've been in a room with all the people that I love the most in this world and felt really alone. And it's horrible. And it's not a good place to be. And so, problems. Now, you got to ask, okay, the rat thing, you have all these problems with the rats, that's fine. Have humans ever tried this experiment? Actually, yes, they have. The experiment has been ran. Vietnam, soldiers wired to, and this is also part of the TED Talk, soldiers got wired to opiates. And so, you know, in the medical fraternity's explanation, all these drug addicts came back to the mainland, into the US of A, even Canada to some extent, and the UK, and 95% of them stopped using heroin and opiates immediately. Holy shit. A change in environment. This is Rat Park. They've got their family, they got their friends, they got bikes and stuff. They're no longer slogging it through the trenches, like almost gonna die at every second. Of course, that's gonna fry your nervous system. Of course, you're gonna want opiates, because opiates is mum, right? Opiates is safety. But what about the 5% that continued? Those are the addicts. There was a definitional error. People who had a chemical dependence to opiates were considered addicts. People who had a chemical dependence to opiates were considered addicts. I don't consider that an addict. And maybe you can think, well, who are you to say what's an addict or not? Like, fair enough. But my mom, hypothetical scenarios never happened. Let's just say my mom shatters her femur. Horrible injury, one of the most painful injuries that you could go through. She would be prescribed opiates. Now, would she continue to use the opiates after her leg was healed and the prescription was over? I would say no. And I know people who have gone through that before, and the answer is no. But they have been taking opiates long enough to develop tissue adaptation and therefore go through withdrawal symptoms. Does that make them an addict? What makes an addict? Chronically relapsing despite not wanting to do it anymore. And so this question, what is addiction? We're not really going to answer it in this video. And maybe we don't need to. And maybe we're going to go a very, 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 very long time before we actually are like, oh, it's this. But I don't know if there's ever going to be oh, it's this. because that would imply one cause. And complicated phenomena usually are just that. They're complicated. You guys have a certain biological makeup. Okay? Some of you guys have elevated levels of cortisol. Some of you guys have heightened amygdaloid activity. Some of you guys have trauma. Some of you guys have gone without fundamental needs when you were young in your first 9 months, or even when you're in the womb. And it's gonna mess you up, and it's gonna develop negative symptoms badly. Also, you have an upbringing, you have environment, the way that your parents treat you. Did you feel loved? Did you feel validated? Was your father there as the encouraging disciplinarian, helping you along your way, telling you, validating that you're doing a good job? If not, you're gonna be mentally ill. And shitty parents, sorry to say it, #1 cause of mental illness, have no patience for that. Now, it's not entirely their fault because they've probably had shitty parents themselves and they're trying to do the best they can with the cards that they were dealt, but again, no patience for it. So what do? Here's a suggestion. Here's a suggestion that I have to offer you guys. Given the fact that there's, back to the Gabor-Mate, trauma equals addiction, adverse childhood experience, all that stuff, my #1 piece of advice is to never stop searching for the origins of your addiction. Because when you do that, you will understand some things about yourself. You will understand some things about the way that you behave. And you will have some awareness as to even stop doing some of the behaviors that cause the destructive symptoms that you guys exhibit.
Okay, so when you say never stop looking for the origin of your disease, in a sense is what you're saying, like because a lot of people sometimes will stop and say, like, I blame this, I blame my parents, it's my parents' fault. Is that sort of the direction that you're taking it, or are you saying, like, continue to be curious?
The second one, more than the first. But you bring up a very interesting point, and it's like, discover the origins of your addiction, but laying blame is not necessarily healthy. So the answer to what is addiction is not simple. If we really knew what addiction was, we could just solve it. Oh, this is what it is, tweak it, there we go. But we don't. But what I'll tell you guys is there is biological origins, okay? There are psychological origins from your environment, from your peer group, from your parents, right? And so all of these things blend together to create addiction. If there is one cause of addiction, if you could say anything is the cause of addiction, it's fear. Fear is the #1 symptom, even more than drug use. Because some of us can stay dry for quite some time. None of us can escape fear. Well, that's not true. We do the steps, we do a program of recovery, and we can bring the amount of fear that we suffer from back into a functional range, because unfortunately, fear is actually good for people. It keeps them alive, it keeps them sharp, it keeps them on their toes and ready to battle it. But what's happened with us is because of upbringing, because of biological factors, we're hypersensitive to fear. We're threat sensitive. Man, everything is the straw that broke the camel's back when I'm in addiction. Just the way that someone looks at me can scare me. I don't want to get a new job. I don't want to have to learn a new job in front of everybody. Am I going to be successful? Am I ever going to find that special someone? Am I ever going to do this? If there's one thing that will guarantee that you remain in addiction for the rest of your life, is succumbing to fear over and over and over again. All right, thank you guys for coming to this group, and stay curious, my friends. That was pretty bad, wasn't it? Was that bad?
Yeah, I would just say stay curious, yeah. Not my friends, just stay curious.
I thought it was like a Dos Equis thing. It was kind of funny. But that wasn't a funny group. It was more of a serious one.